Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for tuning in to this webinar on campus life and safety. If you've been here before, you already know us, but we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. Hello, I'm Alina Coleman. I'm from Evansville, Indiana. It's like kind of the middle of the country. I'm in the class of 2022 at the University of Notre Dame, and I study English and Spanish with a minor in education.
Yeah, hi, my name is Asha. I also attend the University of Notre Dame. I'm originally from around Chicago, Illinois, and I am studying economics, global affairs, and digital marketing. So we can just get into it. Today we're going to be talking about campus life and safety. So first, kind of in terms of campus life, we're going to start off with the different types of universities. I'm sure most of you have come across this in your kind of application process research, but I'm just going to go over it really quick. So first, we have state or public universities, and usually they have a much larger student population. And sometimes they're also broken up into main campuses and branch campuses. So your main campus is kind of the more popular one, definitely the larger university, probably in a bigger city or more recognizable city. And branch campuses are kind of offshoots of this main campus. And state and public universities also have, in addition to their larger student body, usually have a wider array of majors and schools to study within. So that's kind of one of the benefits of it. So the pictures that we have here are the two largest public universities in the US. On top, you have the University of Central Florida in Orlando, which has 71,000 students. And on the bottom, you have Texas A&M, which is located in College Station, Texas, and it has 69,000 universities. So 69,000 students, sorry. So these are obviously the two bigger ones. You can find much smaller public universities, but usually the state colleges have a much larger student population, such as these two. And then next, looking at private universities, these universities are typically smaller than public universities, kind of small to middle-sized universities, which we'll get into later. These universities have larger endowments, so more donations from alumni, and typically have more expensive tuitions because of this. And usually, because of these larger endowments, there's more opportunities for kind of more scholarships, need-based or merit scholarships to kind of supplement this expensive tuition. So the two that I have pictured here are MIT is on the bottom. That's their campus there in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and it has about 11,000 students. And then on the top, we have a picture of Stanford University, which has 16,000 students, located in kind of Northern California, so a little bit more sunny, a little bit more beachy than Massachusetts. Okay, so then moving on into our next two types of universities, we're looking at liberal arts universities first, or liberal arts colleges, actually, liberal arts colleges. So they offer a broad range of courses in the liberal arts, which includes topics such as literature, history, different languages, math, and life sciences. So on top here, we have Wesleyan University, which is about 3,200 students. And on the bottom, we have Swarthmore College, which has about 1,500 students, and that's located in Pennsylvania. So for a lot of these liberal arts colleges, there's a lot on the East Coast, but they're also kind of spread out everywhere. And they typically have a much smaller student population, so they would be considered small colleges. And then lastly, the last type of university we're going to look at is special focus universities. So this includes things like single gender universities, art schools, religiously affiliated schools, There's things called specialized focus schools, which have usually a mission that guides them. So an example of this would be historically Black colleges and universities. That would be an example of a specialized focus university. And also military academies fall within this type of university. So what we have here is on the top, Barnard College at Columbia University in New York City. This is a single gender girls college. And on the bottom, we have Brigham Young University in Utah, and they are a religiously affiliated university. Probably, I don't want to say the most famous, but one of the more recognizable religiously affiliated universities, because they're out of Utah and are sponsored by the Mormons or the Church of Latter-day Saints. If you don't know what that is, it's totally fine. It's like only in America kind of religion, but that's kind of one of the more specialized focused universities. Okay, so now kind of looking at different types of campus landmarks. Campus life in the United States is probably pretty different to kind of what you're used to, just in that there is a campus. It's not, while there are city universities, there's also a lot of campus-based universities. So kind of at the top here with MIT and Wisconsin, you have two examples of dorms or like residence halls where people live. And obviously the MIT one is a little bit more artistic, but the Wisconsin-Madison one is kind of more typical what a residence hall would look like. Very basic residence hall right there. And then on the bottom, you have a picture of a quad. Whenever someone refers to a quad, it's basically just like a long strip of grass, usually with buildings on either side of it, and just kind of walking space, sitting space for students to hang out in. If anyone talks about a quad, that's basically what they're talking about. It's different kind of for every university. Some have lots of quads, some have no quads, like if you're in a city. So just an example of that. And then on the left here, we have an example of a church. So some private universities, some liberal arts colleges, and some religiously affiliated universities, obviously, will have some sort of a church or some sort of religious space on campus. So this is a pretty famous one at Duke University in North Carolina. So just something to be aware of, looking at whether the colleges you're looking at will have some sort of space for religion, if that is what you're interested in. Okay. And then this is kind of the more university-specific part, kind of a campus signature. So a lot of the times when people are visiting universities, there's this one thing that they absolutely have to take a picture with, and that's kind of like the campus signature. So for a lot of these, they vary obviously by university. So on the top left, we have University of Washington, also known as UW, and this is their massive fountain kind of in the middle of their quad university life. This is just right in the middle. And then kind of in the center here, we have the University of Michigan Stadium, which holds upwards of 80,000 people, which is a lot. And it's actually the largest stadium in the US. So it's larger than any professional sports stadium, which is really, really cool. And then on the right, we have the gates at the University of Indiana, just kind of a really pretty picturesque spot. We've got the University of Virginia Rotunda. So this is just kind of like an administrative / historical building that is kind of their campus signature. And then lastly, University of California, San Diego. This building is actually a library. I know it doesn't really look like it, but this is kind of their most famous building on campus. And it's definitely, a work of art. Let's just say that. Okay, and so kind of the last part of campus life that I wanted to talk about, I was mentioning kind of the sizes of some of these schools. So just some general categories: a small school, so typically liberal arts, or smaller private schools, or sometimes some of the branch campuses that I mentioned earlier would be considered small colleges, so fewer than 5,000 students. And then medium, it's kind of a good mix of public and private universities, kind of anywhere from 5 to 15,000 students. And then large universities, kind of as I mentioned before, are larger than 15,000 students. So that's your Texas A&M, your Ohio State, just like these huge, massive campuses with like student populations that are bigger than some towns in the US even. So definitely something to consider, kind of what size you're looking at when you're looking at campus life and how that'll impact your social life. So for all three types of these campuses can be located in a lot of different kinds of towns or cities. So kind of the most frequent are towns, college towns, and cities. So just to kind of differentiate between these three, a town is obviously the definitions kind of vary, but a town is definitely smaller than your typical idea of a city, not huge skyscrapers, nothing like that, more residential. But the difference between a town and a college town is that a town, there's a university in a town versus a college town. The town kind of surrounds the university, and everything about the university is kind of embedded in the culture of that town. So a lot of the shops, restaurants, housing is likely to be pretty inexpensive and close to the university, as well as more student dominated. And typically in these college towns, there's a pretty big emphasis on the sports and the sports teams. And the college town really embraces the university sports teams kind of as their own. And so, kind of looking at the city life, a city would probably have housing and restaurants that aren't really connected to the university at all, probably a little bit more expensive, and might take a little bit of a travel, either by like bus, train, or walking. That's kind of how you would go about that in a city. And for your social life, your student social life is kind of within this larger group of the city social scene. So there's a lot more things to do, a lot more social spaces and entertainment, but it's not exactly revolved around the university. It's revolved around the city. So going to university in a city probably means more distractions, kind of more social activities, things like that. Probably more job and internship opportunities, just because it's a huge city. There's a lot of opportunities there, and it'll probably be easier to get to either by air or train, and easier to get around if you don't have a car. In these college towns or small towns, it's probably a little bit more difficult to get around if you or your friends don't have a car. America is very car centric, but in the cities, lots of trains, lots of buses, very walkable, things like that. So now I'm going to hand it over to Alina, and she's going to kind of talk about the safety aspect of campus life.
Yeah, so now that we know all these things about what our life on campus is going to be like, it's important to stay safe. And I have several slides to talk about this, so you might get tired of my voice by the end of this. But we'll start with theft. So theft, robbery of any kind is really the most common crime that happens on a college campus, at college in general. And one thing to know about this is that all U.S. universities that receive funding from the federal government, so that is 99 out of 100, I can't even think of a university that doesn't receive any funding. All of those universities are required by law to release a report called the Annual Security Report of all their statistics for all types of crime. So if you're looking at your university and you're going to say, is my university really safe? What sorts of crime do they have? You can always look at that if that's something that really interests you, to see, okay, how often are things stolen on campus? What's the kind of ratio there? And then in terms of avoiding theft, it's really kind of the common sense things that you might think of immediately. So don't leave belongings unattended. Don't leave your laptop out in the middle of the student union and like leave for 30 minutes, especially if, as Asha talked about, you're at one of these larger schools, a state school. That's really, something could happen. If you do want to, study and then go away for a little bit, I would definitely advise, studying in groups. That's already great. And if you have a group of people there, you can leave your stuff and not be worried about it. So one of the things we often talk about is locking your room when you go out. If you leave, keep your key with you and lock your room. I personally don't do this, which I don't really want to admit. But I found that, there's not a great incidence of theft at my university. No one's really walking into your room for no reason. And I don't really have anything anyone wants to steal. I have some old clothes and some bed sheets. If someone really wants those, they can knock themselves out. But I would say, especially at larger universities, especially at first when you're trying to figure out the campus culture, locking your room is a great way to go. And if you have anything really valuable to you, like maybe jewelry, a special perfume, if you want to leave your laptop or your phone in your room when you go out, you can always consider getting a safe and keeping that in your room. And then in general, lock your car. If you have a car, lock your bike, get a bike lock, and get one of those bike locks that they can't clip. So get one that is either like a bar of some kind, like the metal U looking thing, or one of those ones they sell on Amazon that they say are unclippable. And then one kind of tip that you might not think of is to personalize your belongings. So people are looking, if they're looking for a laptop to steal, looking for a phone to steal, they want ones that can be marketed pretty easily. So ones that have nothing on them, ones that can easily be sold. But if you have stickers or some sort of drawing or some sort of personalized case that's hard to get off on your phone or your laptop, that can be a great way to deter theft without having to go to any extreme measures. And then make sure to keep your keys on you. So that's something you might not think of, like your laptop or your phone, that you want to keep safe, but you do want your keys to be with you. So you can get a lanyard like one of these to keep around your neck. They're a little bit, call them freshman, first year lanyards. I still use mine and I'm going to my fourth year and I love mine. But any type of wallet, keeping your key with your ID, those are all great ways to make sure nothing happens to your belongings while you're away. Okay, next slide. And then this one is a little more serious, keeping yourself safe. So we talked about campus life, we talked about social life, and obviously at some point you'll want to go out with your friends, go to parties, go to any sort of thing like that. And you want to make sure when you're doing that you're doing it the safest way possible. So taking a self-defense class, a lot of US universities offer these free of charge to students as like a non-credit bearing class that you can take at your university. Watch your drink. Again, this is common sense, but don't leave your drink with people you barely know, even with people who seem nice, right? Don't accept substances from people you don't know. I feel a little bit like a mom here, but don't accept anything from people you don't know. And this is really important, to go with a group and leave with the same group. So don't accept a ride from, again, a casual acquaintance, even if they seem like a nice person, you've only met them one or two times, or any sort of strangers. When you've been out at a party for a long time, you're often not thinking right. And you really want to make sure you've agreed with your group to leave with the same group. Agree on a sort of transport. So Uber or Lyft, or if you're in a city, you're going to walk together. And of course, you can share your location via, I don't know if Androids do this, but Apple iPhones, you can share a location with someone for a certain amount of time. And that way you can check in with people and make sure that they're on the right route, that they're staying safe. And then if you have to walk any sort of long distance in the dark, so let's say you live off campus and you walk home, or you live in the city and you have to walk somewhere in the dark, you might consider carrying a non-lethal weapon like pepper spray or mace. Mace is a brand name for pepper spray, but you'll hear that used a lot. A taser might be a little bit bulky, but you can consider that. And then something you can buy really cheaply, these high beam flashlights that you can just clip on to your keys like this. I have my pepper spray, but you can clip onto your keys and you can like shoot it at someone's eyes and then they can't see and then you have time to run. So that's something that's more low key. And then if you're going out by yourself, if you're going on a date with someone you don't know very well, let your friends know where you're going and when you'll be back. This, again, is common sense, but keep people in the loop with you so that you're not ever in danger. Everyone is looking out for you. Your friends and your people are looking out for you. Okay, next slide.
And just really quick, this obviously isn't meant to scare you or make you think that college is some super, super dangerous place where everyone's terrible and everyone steals from you and tries to lace your drink. That's not what we're saying. You don't know these people that well. And so they could be a bad person and you just don't know it yet. So these are just some precautions that you could consider taking if you feel unsafe in a certain situation.
Yes, great point, Asha. And then this is something I wanted to mention that a lot of U.S. universities have. They're like blue light boxes. So this is the guy, and you'll see them around campus, especially in places that are darker, where people walk. And you can press a button and make a call to the police, to a security person, and it'll light up so it deters any sort of crime or any sort of situation. Next slide, please. And these are some safety apps you can consider getting. These often do the same thing. So Companion will let people you choose, so certain contacts, see your location on a map and track that if you're walking back somewhere. KiteString is a really good one if you don't have a smartphone, because it's not an app, it's like a text-based service. So you text KiteString when you'll be back, and if you don't like check up by a certain number of minutes after that time that you said you would be back, it'll text people who you've added to it to alert them. And then Noonlight and Circle of Six are also very similar to that. So, and then one thing I wanted to talk about just really briefly, I'm sure many of you will hear this as part of your university orientation or your residential life orientation. But obviously one thing we want to be safe in as well is our relationships. So in college, we meet a lot of new people, we get into relationships, and that's great. But I just want to shout out some signs of unhealthy relationships to make sure we're aware of those as part of our personal safety. So Katie Hood gave a TED Talk. She's from the One Love Foundation, which is an organization that promotes healthy relationships. She gave a talk about this, and she mentions 5 signs. So intensity, that's when it's like, I haven't seen you in 5 minutes. What are you doing? It feels like a lifetime. I need you here right now. The isolation, this can be a little bit harder to distinguish, but kind of pulling you away from friends and family. So, and saying stuff like, why do you hang out with them? They don't even really like you. I'm the only person that likes you. These extreme jealousy moments. So people get jealous. That's normal. It's normal to be a little bit jealous, but it's not normal to be extremely jealous, and to always be asking, where are you going? Who are you with? What sorts of things are you doing? That sort of thing. And being cautious there. Belittling. So, talking down to you, saying rude things, maybe picking on you in a way that really hurts, and then saying, why are you so sensitive? It's nothing. Like, what's your problem? And then finally, volatility. So looking for those kind of mood swings, those changes in behavior, maybe someone getting really, really angry, and then the next moment being so sorry and never do that again. And so I just wanted to mention those briefly here so that you would have those in mind for relationship safety. Okay, next slide. And then I just want to mention looking out for others. So we talked about keeping yourself safe. And again, this is not to scare you in any way. Again, I don't lock my room. I go out at night with friends, and sometimes I wander off and they have to find me. And it's safe, and I've been safe. But part of going to school and being a part of a university community is being committed to other people. So even people you don't know at some sort of event you're at a party, at some sort of gathering, looking out for them. So if you see something, say something. If you see something suspicious, call it out. You can look in and see if your university has bystander intervention training. So this is where you learn, a bystander is someone who's not part of an encounter. So they're not the people involved, but they're watching it. How do you intervene and how do you do this well? Some keys to this, some just brief keys, are to communicate with your friends and group to make sure everyone is open and honest about what's happening. Be aware and alert. So this is what I was talking about in general, looking out. Can you see someone maybe being, targeted in some sort of way by someone they don't seem very interested in, or someone being given a lot of drinks? Again, this is, never happened in my experience, but it's something you should be looking out for. If you see someone who needs any sort of help, be direct and ask them, don't just stand by. And then finally, know these signs, think about these things before you go to college, and help your friends to identify these signs. And even if it's not happening to you, know the resources that you can use, which I'll talk about on the next slide, I think. Yes, okay, so campus resources. Again, if you're a victim of a crime, you can always first get to a safe place. So if anything has happened, make sure you're safe first. And then you can call 911 is the general number for the police in the United States, or university police. So I recommend having the university police number in your phone, either as one of your quick dials or just in your phone so that you can use. And then one thing, again, is that most four-year universities in the US have some sort of police, have some either specific police force or security guards. Obviously, and that was in 2011, that statistic is from 2011. Again, this is very controversial about policing and universities, but that service is there. Some colleges also have firefighters and emergency medical services, so people who are trained to, help you in any sort of accident or emergency. And then in terms of what we were talking about, personal safety and relationship safety, Title IX is part of an act that was passed in Congress in the 70s. So Title IX is this specific part of a law that prevents and protects against discrimination on the basis of sex in all U.S. universities that receive federal funding. So like I mentioned, that's most of the universities in the U.S. All universities are required to have a Title IX office and to abide by the mandates of this law. So they have to report on sexual violence in their communities. They have to provide support to victims, and they have to help conduct disciplinary procedures if an offense is found. So if that's something you need to know, remember that that's there. And it sounds a little weird, like what is Title IX? But that's what it's there for. It's to help people of all sexes and all genders feel safe on campus. And then finally, as we've talked about in the past, there is always university counseling. Most universities have this service that you can use for any sort of issue that might come up, large or small. I think that's all I actually had. I talked a little bit fast. I'm very sorry if it was hard to understand. Do you have anything else to add, Asha, on top of
Uh,
that?
no, I think now we're going to be moving into kind of the questions portion of the webinar. So if you have any questions on any of the things we've talked about, anything involving campus life, safety, or any general questions, we are here to help. Oh, yes, please write your questions in the chat.
Perfect. Again, universities and colleges are not really scary places, but they can be. So that's why we have this discussion.
Okay, so it looks like we have one question here. In your experience, is there more risk from partners or from strangers? And I'll kind of take a stab at this first. In my experience, it has been more from strangers or like friends of friends. Um, but it's not to discount the other, especially if you are in a city where not everybody at whatever social space you're going to is from your university. That's definitely an avenue for some danger to be presented to you. And especially just like, it's not scary, but it's more just like you have to remember that, you don't really know these people. And it's a lot easier to, I think, assume that somebody maybe doesn't have your best intentions in mind and kind of keep that with you and let them prove you wrong instead of assuming they have good intentions and then kind of getting screwed over later. So definitely kind of an area of caution, just like when you're meeting new people or when you're meeting people of the opposite gender, it's very, very easy to have them prove you wrong and prove that they have good intentions rather than the other way around. So that's kind of just something that I take with me in my personal life. But Alina, if you have anything to say.
Yeah, I think that was really great. I do want to say, I think like statistically, they say often problems arise with people you already know, so partners. But the reason I wanted to bring up relationship health and those issues were because my friends have experienced those types of problems. I haven't personally, but I wanted to make sure that they were out there and voiced, because a lot of people have expressed to me that if I had known like what this looked like before, I feel like I wouldn't have had to go through this. So that's why I wanted to give you that knowledge on relationships. But I think it's fair to, again, especially when you're first starting out at a university, you might not know everyone. Just like Asha says, you might not even know the group you're with very well. And it's important to assume the worst, but expect the best, right? That sort of motto. I think I went a little on a tangent there, but sorry.
No, you're all good. It looks like we have another question. Do you need to be from a particular religion to attend a religiously affiliated university? This is a really good question. So, short answer, no, you really don't. But it's always good to look into what religiously affiliated universities require of their students. So you don't need to be a certain religion, but at Notre Dame, they require you to take 2 theology classes. And one of them is like fairly centered around Catholicism. So if that's not something that you really want to do, if you are not a Catholic, then maybe that's not the right school for you. Or I know Pepperdine, a school out in California, it requires their students to attend. I'm not sure if it's Catholic or Christian, but they require you to attend Mass every Sunday. So you obviously don't have to be practicing that religion, but you are required to go to Mass. And so it's just like things like that. But short answer, no, you do not have to be from a particular religion.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I think that one thing, though, you might want to look out for is if you're of another faith tradition and going to a university that is religiously affiliated, making sure that they have pastoral care, that they have services for your religion, that might have a Muslim Students Association or like a Christian Students Association if it's at a public university, and making sure that you have some sort of resources for that.
Okay. This one is obviously very relevant to America. And I don't know if you guys have thought about this or not, but yes, we definitely have problems with active shooters. Colleges, a lot of the times they have a like safety warning system. So if there's any sort of dramatic event, so whether that's like a lockdown because of an active shooter,
A fire.
I don't want to make it sound like terrible, but they're like bomb threats or maybe like a tornado, a hurricane, like that would be kind of a disastrous event. They have warning systems. So usually you'll get like a text, email, phone call. There'll be like messages blaring from loudspeakers saying like, please go inside, like lockdown, go see your RA or whoever runs your dorm and kind of be locked down. They would give you lockdown procedures kind of as you get inside different buildings. Alina, is there anything you want to say?
I mean, I would say I would not worry about campus active shooter situations. I really don't think shootings on, I could be completely wrong about this. I don't know this is statistics. Obviously, there are shootings on college campuses. I don't think they're really prevalent. I know at least I've never really heard of any of my friends who go to other universities experiencing something like that. But Asha brings up a good point. All universities have some sort of emergency alert system. It's normally for weather. So it's normally, like she said, tornadoes or any of the crazy weather we might have. But again, there are procedures for that. There are safety alert systems. And if you see something, say something, call 911, call campus police. But yeah, I'm sorry that is a large part of American presence on the global
but I would say it does
imaginary.
not happen very often.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry.
Okay, so this one is about issues with faculty and campus safety. So I feel like, Alina, I think you can kind of take this one, kind of like personal safety, relationship safety.
Yeah.
I kind of think that's what this is hinting at.
Yeah, I think so. So the Title IX office and university proceedings in that matter are supposed to count for faculty. So you are able to, if you have any sort of interaction that feels incorrect with a faculty member, you are able to bring that up and petition that. Those are obviously very difficult cases. I've heard of some cases where, faculty essentially get a slap on the wrist. They don't get a huge punishment. But there are systems in place for you to petition. It's the same offices as if you had a problem with another student or someone else. So there's really no difference in the path. It might just be more difficult for disciplinary action to occur. That was a long answer too.
Yeah, just one additional thing about Title IX, especially considering personal sexual relationship safety, you are allowed to file charges against another student or a faculty member anonymously. So you can keep your name completely out of it, and it's just about, the case, what happened to you, and, the victim can be completely nameless. So that's definitely one really, really good thing about the office.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Are personal safety items like pepper spray legal everywhere? Again, it's non-lethal weapons. All of those are pretty much legal anywhere. You don't need any sort of permit to buy pepper spray. You do have to be over 18, so they will card you to buy pepper spray. They will look at your ID. But other than that, no, they're legal because you can't, exercise lethal force with them. You could, I guess, but I don't think you can, actually.
Okay, so campus police, kind of their presence on campus, can they feel overbearing? And how would the proceedings kind of work if you wanted to report something?
Asha, do you want to start out with this one?
Sure. So if you ask most college students, the answer that they'll give you is that, like, the campus police busted me for drinking. Like, I hate the campus police. Or they took my fake ID. Like, what the heck, man? So I feel like that's most students' interaction with the campus police. And in that case, it works very similar to just kind of a regular encounter with the police. Sometimes they will hand your case over to the local police, and then it'll just go through like normal trial paperwork proceedings, I guess. But most of the time, most people I know, they just get like a ticket with the campus police or a ticket with the local police, and then you just pay it. But in terms of reporting something to them and paperwork, I'm not quite sure about the proceedings on that.
I think generally there isn't a lot of paperwork for you to do if you're calling in something like, I see something that is concerning. You don't have to do a lot of the paperwork in that case. The only time that, again, I don't really think campus police are not entirely overbearing. Most of them don't carry guns. Some do, but not all do.
They don't do much.
Yeah, they don't really do that much. The only time I had to fill out a lot of paperwork was when they accidentally gave me a ticket, but it wasn't my car. It was on another car, but it was associated with my name for some reason. So I had to petition that, and that was very annoying. But other than that, I don't think you have to worry about that. What about drinking? Great question.
Obviously, college campus life. In America, you have to be 21 to drink. However, since there are 21-year-olds going to school with 18-year-olds, it is fairly easy for 18, 19-year-olds to acquire alcoholic beverages. That's kind of just the way it works. Not the way it should work legally, but that's kind of how it happens. So actually, one thing to kind of be aware of, some campuses are considered dry campuses, so they don't let any sort of alcohol on their campus. So even if you're 21, dry campuses, if they find beer or wine in your dorm room for some reason, you will get in trouble for that. There are other sorts of university rules. So at our school, once you're 21, you can only have beer or wine. So yeah, if you're caught with any sort of hard liquor, that is against the rules, even if you are 21. And then some universities just don't really care. And then they let you have whatever type of alcohol that you want to buy when you're 21. So that's something to be super aware of, school rules versus federal rules. If you are caught as an international student breaking federal rules, the punishment is going to be a lot more severe than some of your classmates. So like I said before, a lot of my classmates just got tickets. Like you just get a ticket, like drinking underage, you just have to pay a fine. But since you are international students, it could get you in trouble with the visa offices. So definitely, please be aware of that.
Yeah, and I would say that there are campus proceedings for, being caught drinking or intoxicated. It's generally like a 3-strike system, which is a baseball metaphor. So you get 3 chances, and then the last time you have serious disciplinary action. But again, there are different stakes for different people. So not only if you're an international student, but if you have a certain type of scholarship, scholarships can be jeopardized by even the 1 strike. So even a first offense of drinking on campus.
Yeah, that's
so you want to be really careful with that. And Wait till you're 21 is a best policy.
How strict are the rules? Kind of as we said before, please don't drink underage. However, a lot of kind of 18, 19, 20-year-olds kind of from the US obviously find ways around it. So like I said, there are 21-year-olds on campus that will buy you beer. So that's one way to kind of get around the rules. Definitely not advocating it though. It depends.
Trying not to encourage underage drinking.
It depends on the town that you're in. So typically, college towns, because so much of their kind of businesses and economy revolves around the college students, typically they are a little bit less strict with the rules surrounding drinking than, say, a city. In a city, it's fairly strict. But college towns and towns, it depends on the university you're attending and the college town you're in. And you probably won't know that until you get there, because like things like how strict are the rules probably changes like year to year. So there's really no way to know kind of until you're there, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Also, one just brief thing is remember that really noisy parties are the most likely to end poorly. So if you're making a lot of noise outside at someone's house, that's very dangerous. Sorry, I keep interrupting. Do I need a car?
Need a car? Not really.
No.
I mean, like the United States is very car-centric, especially like towns and college towns, because they're kind of a little bit further to get from like an airport to a college town. You might need to take like a bus or an Uber or hitch a ride with a friend or something if you live in one of those towns not by an airport. But generally, no, you don't really need one. A lot of the times, everything is really, really close to campus. Because they know that students will buy things.
So sorry, I'm interrupting you this time. But if you need a car, you probably have a friend who has one. Yes. Who will be gracious enough to drive you somewhere. There's also always Uber and Lyft. And then even college towns often have some sort of bus system to get around town. Yeah. So don't forget about that.
Yeah, a lot of the times I know in our kind of college town, they offer free bus rides with your student ID. It's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to use, pretty easy to get around. I took the bus to the airport once. It's pretty simple. But no, you definitely don't need a car.
Oh, that's a great question. So how far does campus safety extend? Is it more reactionary or also preventative? So this is a great question. Oftentimes part of orientation in your dorm, your residence hall, and your kind of general, they might assign you like online videos to watch before you come to school. Those will give these sorts of basic tips for these sorts of things, for safety with alcohol and safety in relationships. There are often different types of either talks and lectures or, like I mentioned, bystander intervention training. So some sort of training to prevent these interactions by empowering people who are just on the sidelines standing around to prevent dangerous events from occurring. And I think a lot of it can be reactionary. I think a lot of it is this bureaucracy around Title IX and other safety procedures that react to these problems. But I think a lot of campuses are working on preventative. So they're working to prevent crimes happening to their students by either giving training or creating more safe events to attend. Again, the blue lights are part of pretty much every US college campus. Another thing to mention is a lot of universities have safe ride programs. So if you need a ride somewhere, Oftentimes, like, it's either like a police officer or some sort of individual.
Student volunteers a lot of the times too.
Yeah, student volunteers who have been background checked will give you a ride somewhere if you need a safe ride.
Yeah, so if you're in a situation that you're uncomfortable with, maybe you are a little intoxicated and need a ride home, that is kind of what that program is for. And I think that kind of segues nicely into our next question, because a lot of people use safe ride home programs from fraternity parties. Mm-hmm. So how do fraternities, sororities work in terms of guidelines? What are the responsibilities and what does the college look out for? So in general, fraternity, sorority life differs a lot based on what university you attend. Generally, Southern universities very, very love their fraternities and sororities. And because of that, the kind of rules around it are a little lax. Sometimes a lot of the stories you hear about like binge drinking, students kind of getting in trouble or maybe hurting themselves during a fraternity or sorority party, maybe comes from those kind of bigger universities. I'm not trying to say that, obviously they're bad, but that's just kind of typically where it comes from. The Southern bigger universities are the ones that love their fraternities and sororities. So what kind of things do the colleges look out for? Underage drinking, mostly. Usually they don't really bust the fraternity party, but the people outside, like going to and from the fraternity party, is where people get busted, because technically a lot of the times it definitely differs based on the university, but a lot of the times at these bigger schools, fraternities have to apply to throw a party. So they get permission from the university to throw a party, and therefore the university just kind of leaves them alone, says, make sure everyone's 21, and then just kind of leaves them alone. So campus police will kind of be lurking outside to make sure that they're kind of abiding by these rules. Hazing is another big thing. Definitely more with fraternities, but I've heard of sororities doing it as well. Sometimes it's just like psychological. Like one of my friends had to sit in a basement and like listen to blaring loud music for like 3 hours. And, that's the kind of hazing that is supposed to inspire like bonding and doesn't really like hurt anyone, which is what it's supposed to do. It's kind of like a brotherhood type thing, if you're into that. But sometimes kind of knowing your personal boundaries in terms of drinking and binge drinking, sometimes that will be a requirement of fraternity hazing. So please be aware of that, and just keep yourself safe. I don't really know how else to address the issue of hazing other than it happens and be careful.
Yeah, I would say, so a lot of fraternities and sororities have been under fire recently for these sorts of things. And in some ways it has improved. So there has been a lot of improvement. A lot of fraternities now, from what I've heard, like if something makes you uncomfortable, they'll let you opt out. That's okay. So I'd keep that in mind. The university, fraternities and sororities are under the jurisdiction of the university. So they do have to abide by rules and guidelines that the university sets out. Okay. Great question.
Ooh, this is a good one.
This is a great one.
Kind of definitely a hard-hitting one. Who do you think is most effective in terms of the communities on campus? So, yeah, this is definitely a hard one.
I think all of them.
Yeah, mostly like any minority community will probably not experience like the same as their counterparts at university, but some places are a lot worse than others, I would say. In general, people try to be like as welcoming and helpful as they can, but sometimes it's not the case. If you made me answer this question, what I would have to say is women are probably the most affected communities, just because of the kind of party culture that exists at certain schools, and just the statistics. 1 in 4 women are sexually assaulted in college, and it's scary. It totally is, and it's definitely just something to be aware of. Obviously, there's a lot of different degrees of that, but it is a scary statistic, and that would probably be my answer.
Yeah, thank you for that. This is not an uplifting talk. I agree. I would say that, again, different universities have different, so some universities are majority African American, some universities are all women, some are majority Latino, right? And it's important to consider that as part of your community. So if that's something you want to make sure is part of your university. At Notre Dame specifically, well, good one. I would say I agree that, women have it particularly difficult with party culture. And at Notre Dame specifically, we have single sex dorms. So we have women's dorms and men's dorms. And that can create a lot of tension where things can go wrong when women go into men's dorms and vice versa, right?
Yes.
I would also say that Notre Dame might not be the best school for LGBTQ plus individuals. It's becoming more open, but it is firmly in the Catholic tradition. So it might not be always safe in that way. I'm going to be completely honest and not just say good things about Notre Dame. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, one of my friends actually transferred from Dayton to the University of Notre Dame, and he had like a huge long line of like Notre Dame graduates, and it was very like deep in his family tradition to go to Notre Dame. And he said it was always the school for him, kind of until he came out, and then he started questioning a lot of his decisions. So it is a little, I'm going to be completely blunt. It's a little Catholic. It's a lot Catholic. It's a lot white. And, it obviously is a very accepting place, but, just kind of the traditions surrounding the administration and the rules and the culture doesn't, make it the best place for everybody. But it's definitely, getting better, changing with the times a little bit. Hopefully we're looking at more change to come, but
okay. Yeah. Again, sorry, this is not an uplifting, gung-ho, let's go to the USA talk. But we're glad we could bring this up and talk about these issues with you. And I think we're about to sign off, but thank you all so much for joining us and for your questions. Don't be scared. That's the first rule. Don't be scared, but be smart. So
that's good. Don't be scared, be smart. And then we are going to be having another webinar. So that will be Tuesday, I believe, the 13th. And that one's going to be about jobs, internship, and summer opportunities. So please join us for that one. And we hope to see you there at 6 p.m. There you go.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.